Are you looking to enter a new career? Or maybe looking to advance yourself in the career you're in? At the University of Guam Global Learning and Engagement, here's where you begin. Enrolling in our online career training program can give you the skills and confidence you need to achieve your career goals. Imagine getting hired at a company or organization doing the job that you've always dreamed of. With over 175 programs to choose from, there's plenty of opportunity for you. You'll dive into the fundamentals of in-demand industries such as business, information technology, health and fitness, project management, and many more. You'll have everything you need to successfully advance your career without disrupting your life. You can enroll at any time, so start today and you're on your way to a new career.
They say there are two kinds of people in this world: those who find themselves and those who create themselves. Are you looking for purpose or deciding it for yourself? Will you plunge waiting for someone to catch you, or will you jump and build your wings on the way down? Seek a path or carve a path. Wait for the future or build it. What is a school but a set of walls waiting for greatness? And who are you but someone destined to achieve it? Here, between the street and the jungle, against time and tide, we push and pull just like the currents. Our ocean of dreams will meet the odds ahead and rise above it all.
Half a day, everyone, and thank you for joining for the WERI Advisory Council meeting, day 3. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge some of our distinguished guests who are joining us today. In line with university protocol, we will be acknowledging our distinguished guests from the university first. Dr. Thomas Kreis, President of the University of Guam, Dr. Rachel Leon Guerrero, Vice Provost for Research and Sponsored Programs, Dean Alicia Uggan, Dean of the School of Education, and Ms. Katrina Perez, Executive Director of UOG Endowment Foundation. And of course, we also acknowledge the presence of our host today, Dr. John Jensen, the Director of WERI. In acknowledging our other distinguished guests as well, we have Speaker Therese Terlahi from the 36th Guam Legislature, Senator Amanda Shelton, also from the 36th Guam Legislature, and Senator Joanne Brown. We also would like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Miguel Bordallo, the General Manager for Guam Waterworks Authority, Ms. Taling Taitano, the Chief Financial Officer for Guam Waterworks Authority, and from JRM, Commander Joshua Perry, Mr. Don Henderson, and Ms. Maria Lewis. And to everyone joining us today, thank you again for being part of our final day of this year's WERI Advisory Council meetings. From here, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. John Jensen, our WERI Director, for his welcoming remarks.
Good morning. Happy day, everybody. I'm a little slow with the mute button, but I want to thank each of you for joining us this morning and for your support throughout the year, throughout the past years, actually. Many of you have been working with us since I got here almost 30 years ago. As I explained in some of the invitations, this is a pivotal event for WERI. This is when we start our annual cycle of planning for the coming year's research, education, training, and outreach activities. And the purpose of the meeting includes reporting on our current work to our partners, clients, stakeholders, and seeking your advice and suggestions. And you'll see from the agenda that we're covering a wide breadth of topics, and we're trying to cover as much as we can. So the speakers are going to be delivering 5 to 10 minute presentations. The capstone of our meeting is going to be the final 45 minutes of open discussion in which we'll get the valuable suggestions that we're seeking, advice, observations, your questions, concerns, and insights from all of you, the people whom we work with and whom we serve. And You know, if it wasn't for the pandemic, we'd all be at one of the hotels down in Tumon, and we'd be having lunch afterwards. I'm looking forward to getting back to those someday, but in the meantime, we're honored to have you all here online. We're especially pleased to have the participation of our community leaders, members of our legislature, utilities commission, regions, agency managers, military leaders and partners, and our professional colleagues. I don't think that leaves anybody out. It's my pleasure now to turn the virtual podium over to our university president, Dr. Thomas Kreis.
Situ Tumasi, Dr. Jensen, thank you everyone for being part of this, and buenas and hafa day. It's my pleasure to welcome you to WERI's annual advisory council meeting for Guam. As Amanda noted, this is actually day 3, that is the last of 3 annual advisory council meetings that WERI has convened in the past few weeks. The University of Guam is unique in being the only public university in the country, and maybe the world, at least to my knowledge, whose charter generously commits it to serving not only its own state or territory, but the surrounding region as well. Accordingly, WERI is unique in being the only one of the nation's 54 state and territorial water resources research institutes that is 3 institutes in one. The University of Guam serves that entire Western Pacific region, and WERI serves, of course, not only Guam, but the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands and the Federated States of Micronesia. Hence its full name, the Water and Environmental Research Institute of the Western Pacific. We at the University of Guam are pleased and proud to serve as the center of a regional partnership, and I'd like to focus on the theme of partnerships for the next few minutes, with reference to our partnership here on Guam, which is the focus of today's meeting. The 54 water resources research institutes were chartered by the U.S. Congress in 1984 as part of the National Water Resources Research Act program, which is administered by the U.S. Geological Survey. We are particularly proud of our close and productive partnership between WERI and USGS's Pacific Island Water Science Center in Honolulu. Their more than 20-year partnership leverages local expertise with national scientific and technical resources to provide vital scientific support to our local island water utilities, environmental agencies, and private engineering and environmental firms serving both the civilian economies and military installations of the region. You are going to hear some of the details of the history of this partnership later, but the most impressive of those details to me is that this partnership, like our university charter, originated from our most basic partnership, our partnership with the people of Guam through the legislature of Guam, which in 1998 gave WERI an explicit funded mandate to enable its collaboration with the Pacific Island Water Science Center and our participation in the USGS's cost-sharing programs for state and territorial data collection on rainfall, stream flow, and groundwater. You are also going to hear for some more details on another long-standing partnership that continues to grow closer. In 2016, WERI and USGS were explicitly recognized and named as the agencies to collect and archive data, and also to provide scientific advice and conduct analyses to support the partnership formalized by the One Guam Water Memorandum of Understanding between Guam Water Works Authority, the Consolidated Commission on Utilities, the Naval Facilities Engineering Command Marianas, and Joint Region Marianas. In 2017, GWA received a grant from the DoD's Office of Economic Adjustment, which included funding to extend the WERI USGS groundwater data collection programs in the existing and new military installations. The new deep observation wells are being drilled now, even as I speak, and you'll be getting a brief progress report in a few minutes on those drills. I have also been advised that under the One Guam partnership, DoD will share the cost of the WERI and USGS data collection and analysis programs, which of course are essential for the joint stewardship of Guam's water resources that is envisioned in the One Guam Partnership. Please join me in welcoming our partners from both USGS and NAVFAC Marianas who have joined us for this meeting. Thank you for being with us. And I'd like to finish on this theme of partnerships by recognizing WERI's partnerships and contributions within the University of Guam. Although as a research faculty, WERI faculty members have no contractual obligation to teach, the WERI faculty from the core of our graduate environmental science program faculty, they are the core of our graduate environmental science program faculty, which produces trained professionals with advanced knowledge in local biology, ecology, geology, hydrology, and environmental challenges unique to our island and the other islands of the region. WERI is thus a close partner with our College of Natural and Applied Sciences, which administers that interdisciplinary program. At the undergraduate level, more than 30 years ago, some of the WERI faculty voluntarily instituted the 2-year pre-engineering program at UOG. And that, of course, eventually grew into our new School of Engineering in 2016. And WERI faculty made central contributions to the launching of the new school, including preparing its curriculum, constituting the search committees for its first faculty, and bridging with partner universities. And most of you know that Dr. Kay, who recently retired as the founding dean of the School of Engineering, came himself from the WERI faculty. Many of our local professional engineers began their education in WERI's classroom and computer lab, and the School of Engineering will graduate its first cohort of students next month. As Dr. Jensen noted, the basic purpose of this meeting is for WERI to report back to its local partners and get your suggestions and advice for moving forward in partnership as stewards of our island's water resources. I will conclude by commending all of you who are present with us as our partners for this online meeting. And I look forward to being part of the outcome of your conversations. Situts Masi, Biba WERI and Biba UOG.
Thank you so much, President Kreis. Before we move on to our first presentation, I do want to acknowledge the presence of a couple more dignitaries, starting with Mr. Paul Kemp, the Assistant General Manager for Guam Water Works Authority, Mr. Timothy Bodell, the Deputy Executive Director from the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation, and we also have Senator Tony Atta, also from the 36th Guam Legislature, logging on today. Thank you all again for being a part of our WERI Day 3 Advisory Council meeting. Now, once again, it is my honor to bring back Dr. John Jensen, who will share a little bit about WERI and what they do.
Okay, I've got to share my screen. Okay, am I good to go, Amanda?
You're good to go, Dr. Jensen.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you again. As President Kreis mentioned, we're one of 54 water resource institutes in the U.S. There's one at each land-grant university, and we get federal funding through the U.S. Geological Survey to conduct research on state and regional water problems, share research results, and train new scientists and engineers. That's in our federal mandate. We also have local mandates that I'll say more about a bit later for research, training, and outreach to support the island's water resources management and preservation. And I'm proud to note that of the 54 institutes, we are one of 12 that received the USGS's top rating of outstanding in their last 5-year review of the institutes. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to introduce our team, review our mission, and share some details on how we fulfill that mission. Our faculty expertise covers the whole water cycle and human use sequence from rainwater to wastewater. We have an excellent water quality laboratory, which serves the whole region, and we've got a world-class administrative staff. I want to start by bragging about our enormously talented team of graduate and undergraduate research assistants that are WERI's scientific labor force. You know, student research assistants, especially graduate students working on their thesis projects, are the frontline troops of science. They do the heavy lifting, they do the monotonous stuff. They stay up all night counting specimens and entering data in spreadsheets. And they do the fun stuff too. You're going to be hearing directly from some of them this morning, and you're going to hear from a couple of our talented undergraduate research assistants, whom we're hoping to recruit for our graduate program. I'm pleased to announce that we have a new 3-story building in the works with funding from a grant from the Federal Economic Development Agency, as President Christ mentioned, and a loan from UFG's Endowment Foundation. Our water quality lab is going to fill the ground floor, and it's going to double the space of our laboratory, which is going to acquire new equipment, expand the volume and scope of its services to the whole community. So that's who we are. So now on to what we do. As the president mentioned, we're unique in that we have a regional mission to 3 communities: Guam, CNMI, and FSM. Today's meeting is about Guam. We've convened separate meetings for CNMI and FSM over the past month. Our success owes to our reputation for providing trustworthy and timely research, instruction, and advice to support scientifically informed development and effective management of the freshwater resources of Guam, CNMI, and FSM. Our core values are listed here. To clarify even more who we are, I'd like to point out explicitly what we are not. We're not environmentalists, and that's not to say anything bad about environmentalists, but simply that our role as scientists is not advocacy, but rather to find, teach, and contribute hard data, objective facts, to inform constructive debate and promote sound environmental policy, management, and use of our resources. On controversial issues, we advise both sides of the facts, whatever they are. And sometimes both sides find us frustrating because we're not yes men and yes women. We see ourselves as being expected and paid to share both the bad news and the good news. That is the unwelcome as well as the welcome information with everybody. And we're not prima donnas. We're team players, public servants, and citizens as well as scientists. And our faculty acknowledges the equally essential roles of our staff and student research assistants in doing good science. So now I'll share some of the pivotal events of our history, our core programs, and the partnerships that have gotten us to where we are today. First, although our mission is to the entire region, as the president mentioned, WERI gets dedicated annual funding from the Guam legislature for research, education, and outreach on Guam. You know, the directors of the other state institutes, when I go to the national meetings, are always amazed when I tell them that our legislature provides funding that exceeds our federal funding. And the legislature funds 2 programs that it established back in 1998 when the record-setting El Nino brought an extended and severe drought to the region. Those who were here remember in 1997 we had Typhoon Paka, and that was followed by very severe drought, which moved the legislature, and Senator Brown introduced that that legislation to create the comprehensive water monitoring program, which was part of the drought management plan. And that funds our research with USGS to collect the data on rainfall, stream flow, and the volume and quantity of our groundwater. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. And it established the Guam Hydrologic Survey Program, which funds the research, the students and the faculty labor that goes into analyzing the data from the CWMP program, as well as other data, to assess the conditions and trends in our water resources and report them back to you. Our partnership with the USGS, as President Christ mentioned, leverages our local expertise with their national scientific resources and the economies of scale that they operate with national program. They can bring people out here who are working on all the islands around the Pacific region, so we don't have to maintain a full-time staff to manage our own data collection. And they're the gold standard for data collection, I have to say. This partnership also provides technical support that goes to our local agencies and environmental professionals in partnership with the programs and consultation that WERI provides. Here's an example of what we get from that partnership. One of the most important things that we do together is track the thickness of our water lens and how it responds to changes in rainfall and pumping. The study depicted here, which was also a national award-winning master's thesis for the young lady in the center of the slide, used the CMP data from 3 deep wells in the core of the aquifer, you can see that on the map there, to track the response of the lens to changes in recharge from 2001 to 2016. And during that time, Mother Nature graciously provided us with a unique natural experiment. That series included the second wettest, followed by the second driest 5-year periods on record. And we watched the lens thicken by 25%, thickened from 100 feet to 125, and then it thinned back to 100 feet. You can also see the response to Tropical Storm Ting Ting. And you can see what it was doing up to 2016, it was thickening again. So this is how we watch the response of the lens to natural changes and to our development of the aquifer, and enables us to provide GWA, Guam EPA, with reliable advice on how the aquifer is doing and what the effects of development are. The Hydrologic Survey Program uses the data from CWMP and other sources for research, professional development, training, public outreach, scientific advisement for all of our water providers and consumers, civilian, military, residents, and visitors. And its most visible product is its website, which you're going to be hearing a talk from one of our student research assistants who helps run it. And that website provides public access to all of our products, databases, maps, technical reports, professional publications, scientific advisory papers, and educational and outreach materials. And you're going to be hearing about one of our flagship outreach programs at Guam Water Kids here in a few minutes. One of the high points of our collaboration came in 2010 when USGS was funded by the Department of Defense to build a comprehensive groundwater model of the aquifer to help managers with the development of the aquifer in support of the buildup. USGS contracted with WERI to build the database and the aquifer map that provided the data and boundary conditions for the model, which we completed together in 2013. And that database and map are still with us and have become the fundamental tools for exploration and management of groundwater resources. I'm pleased that map graces the wall of all of our water environmental agencies and engineering firms, at least all the ones that I've been to so far. The 2010-2013 WERI USGS projects were also related to another even broader collaboration formalized in 2010 by the MOU between GWA, CCU, NAVFAC, MAR, and Joint Region Marianas that the President mentioned, shown here being signed by Admiral Bashang and then CCU Chairman Simon Sanchez and GWA General Manager John Benavente. In December 2016, GWA, NAVFAC, MAR, CCU, and JRM signed the One Guam Water Memorandum of Understanding. Its objectives and provisions are summarized here. The MOU specifically designated WERI as a repository for data, and it expands groundwater data collection into the military installations and provides for joint funding agreements to support expanded analytical programs. And together, this expansion will be called the One Guam Water Resources Information Program. And consistent with the MOU, its mission in exactly 50 words is to provide DoD and GWA with accessible and reliable data, timely analyses and reports, directed research on critical topics, expert assistance for informed engineering management policy decisions, and professional education, technical training, and outreach support to best manage the drinking water resources of Guam. It will have two components: collecting data and analyzing the data and reporting on it. The One Guam framework actually simply formalizes and expands the scope of cooperation between WERI, USGS, GWA, and DoD that's been ongoing for a long time. The services include on-call and on-site advice and assistance in site selection, drilling and testing of new wells, rehabilitation of existing wells, documentation of lessons learned, passing along accumulated knowledge, and workshops and field trips. Other essential services which are explicitly acknowledged in the MOU include archiving and sharing of water production data and water quality data, and conducting research on availability and sustainable yields. WERI's GHS website that I previously described is accessible to both GWA and NAVFAC MAR engineers, planners, managers, operators, and executives, and provides ready access to all the other databases, historical and current maps, atlases, research reports on our water resources. In support of that 2016 agreement, as the President mentioned, the Office of Economic Adjustment provided a grant to GWA to support military relocation to Guam, and that included $3.7 million for what we're calling the Monitoring System Expansion and Rehabilitation Project to rehabilitate the existing wells and expand the groundwater data collection into the military installations where new wells will be installed. This past year, the MSERP project rehabilitated 12 existing wells shown by the blue dots on the image on the left and the black dots on the right. And it's expanding the system to include 7 new wells inside the military installations on sites that are candidates for groundwater production. That's the pink balloons on the image on the left and the red squares on the right. As I speak, we are drilling the first of these, NCSF2 on Camp Blas, shown there by the yellow circle. And that drilling is underway at this very moment. So I'll describe our primary activities in the 5 minutes I have left. As I mentioned at the beginning, research specialties cover the whole water cycle and the whole region. They've ranged from NSF-sponsored basic work on paleoclimate, sea level history, aquifer evolution, climate trends, to applied research on all aspects of quantity, quality, and management of our ground and surface water across the region. You're going to hear about the current ones in detail here, starting in a few minutes. As I mentioned earlier, the frontline troops of science are our student research assistants. So successful research starts with recruiting, equipping, and training the troops. And as I noted, training new scientists and engineers is also one of our national mandates. So it's from enlightened self-interest that back in the early 90s, WERI faculty worked with the rest of the UOG faculty, especially in the College of Natural and Applied Sciences, to put together the environmental science program, from which we've graduated now about 70 students. And they launched, as the president mentioned, the pre-engineering program, and have been part of that ever since. That investment has paid off. I want to show off our brag wall here with the 25 at last count, or thereabouts, of alumni and students from those programs who are employed or have been employed on Guam in our public and our private sector. And finally, I'll highlight our three premier services and products, what I like to call our crown jewels. First of those is our water quality lab, which not only supports our own research, but provides services to the island's other laboratories, as well as commercial services to industry and household. And like I mentioned, we're going to double that lab. It trained our laboratory manager for Guam Water Works Authority, who stole Jennifer Cruz from us. But we got Mallory Duenas running it now, and she's following in Jennifer's footsteps to do a tremendous job. And she's going to be the lady here leading it into the expansion in the new the new building. And there's more to come. And another of our jewels that I mentioned is the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer Database, which constituted a master's thesis for one of our students. Now contains over 4,000 historical documents on 500 wells and boreholes, and much more. And as I mentioned, the hydrogeologic map of the aquifer, which also constituted a master's thesis, is now on the walls of all of our engineering firms and environmental consultants and managers, and we're working on keeping that up to date. You're going to hear about our efforts on finding proper local names for that map, which just got us started on that. But next you're going to hear from one of our alums who recently took on running the Water Kids program, which is also one of our crown jewels. It reaches out to our most important stakeholders, and that's the hundreds and maybe thousands of school students who are the stakeholders with the biggest stake in managing Guam's water resources for the future. So I'm going to step off the stage and hand the microphone back to our moderator, who will get the program rolling for us here. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Jensen. Before we move on to Ms. Kaylin Bautista's presentation on Guam Water Kids, which we're pulling up right now, we do also want to acknowledge the presence of a few more dignitaries who've joined us, including the 10th President of University of Guam, Dr. Robert Underwood, Senator Chris Duenas of the 36th Guam Legislature, Mr. Carlos Taitano, Director of University of Guam Global Learning and Engagement, and Mr. Peter Roy Martinez, Commissioner with the CCU. Thank you all, Sizuis Maasi, for joining us today. With that said, we'll go ahead and transition over to Guam Water Kids by Ms. Kaylin Bautista.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Dr. Jensen. Really appreciate the spotlight. I am almost halfway around the world in upstate New York. And so I've been with WERI for since 2013, but in the past couple of years, I've been very fortunate to take over the Guam Water Kids program, which is one of WERI's really outstanding education and outreach programs. And so what Guam Water Kids really aims to do is to transmit knowledge of the freshwater resources and water conservation among the local community, and this is through our island school system. Next slide, please. So for today's advisory council meeting, these have been very successful venues in which WERI can gain feedback toward building up training and capacity outreach in a 3-tier learning mode for the island communities. And at these meetings, they've really helped us to tune our programs for our youngest learners, which are our students in the kinder through 12th grade school districts, to the professional level water technicians, managers, and educators, and even to the highest levels in the local and federal government. And what's really great is we've been able to package these events and materials to each audience. So everyone is able to have some form of training or outreach to water education, freshwater resources on Guam, geology, and hydrology. Next slide, please. So currently, Guam Water Kids program is operating in its 11th year for WERI, and also has partnered with the USGS, which has provided funds for WERI to bring out this to the schools. And so these resources and materials has helped visualize and conduct actual hands-on experiments in the classroom on local geology, hydrology, and even pollution sources. And WERI has been able to collaborate with the Guam Department of Education through this whole time to produce materials that have been acceptable on the NGSS, or the National Grade Science Standards, currently what GDOE uses, so that it can give educators, parents, students, and anyone interested in freshwater resources materials that they can use even at home on online platforms or in the classroom. And Guam Water Kids has also been recognized as a program that strives to motivate students and people to be productive citizens and good stewards of the environment. Our motto, which is very catchy, it collaborates with the rich to reef approaches. If you wouldn't drink it, don't dump it on the ground. Because as we teach the students, these sources can potentially end up in our drinking water supply and eventually into our coral reef ecosystem. Next slide. So actually nothing beats going outside the classroom for a day of hands-on local geology and hydrology. So educators and parents actually have been treated to this experience during some of WERI's professional field trips of the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer, which are normally held in the springtime. So Dr. Jensen and Dr. Abana, Dr. Kim have been the hosts of these, and Dr. Jensen takes us on a windshield tour of the aquifer, and Guam Water Kids has co-hosted several of these workshops, and they are titled Teaching Outside the Walls. And the NGLA field trip has been a big success. We've invited educators from around each school district, and also in the private sector, and even in the military sector. So everyone has had an opportunity to be on this and participate. We have also, Guam Water Kids itself has been invited to several educator symposiums. We've also been at other workshops. Some of them have been hosted by the Office of Civil Defense, and Ms. Hope Cristobal's here too. And she recently asked us to speak at the Summer Educators Symposium. And that was a lot of fun. We gave out these really cool kits that the teachers could use this coming school year. We've been asked at summer camps and even in homeschool cohorts to host hands-on experiments with the students and their parents together. Next slide, please. So I really want to showcase the team teacher team from PC Lujan. I've collaborated with them for the past 3 school years, and this year we were very fortunate to be able to have an in-person guest presentation because we know that with GDOE and the school moving from an online to an A and B cohort teaching platform has been kind of an adjustment that we needed to work with the students. So the teachers and I, normally what we do is we go and we rehearse ahead of time and we do a mock presentation for the students. And this year we had 3 classes. So each teacher, Ms. LG, Mrs. Ranson, and Mrs. Torres, they each have 2 days where they have to teach the same lecture materials, everything to their students. So we actually had 6 that we had to do. These teachers are very well prepared. They have their laptops, projectors, even Prometheum smartboards. So we work really well when we're prepared a little bit ahead of time for the students. And so I like to show a few pictures and examples of what we did this school year. Next slide, please. So the students get their presentations in the form of content about the water cycle, the rock types of Guam, and the 2 freshwater resources on the island, which are surface and groundwater. And then they get to enjoy their first experiment. So we created a ridge to valley landscape using very simple things you can find even around your house, which is wax paper, markers, and just something to hold the water that we are gonna mimic precipitation as. So since we were social distancing, each student was to have their own personal southern mountain range. And then what they did was they created a hypothesis and they drew where they thought rivers would form after precipitation occurred. And many of the students were very surprised at how many potential rivers they actually missed. And a good number of students even had their own man-made lakes. And we talked about all of the different kinds of these features in our Guam Water Kids slideshows. And they had a really good time. And this was a very simple but very great way to bring the students back into the classroom and to showcase how fast water can actually travel from ridge to valleys, or even from ridge to reef, even in sudden downpours. Next slide, please. Our second experiment was also an individual exploration, and the students created a working model of the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer. They had our adaptation of the Groundwater Foundation's aquifer kit, but we did an aquifer in a cup, and we actually used local limestone. The students became their own well drillers and operators, and we had them install their faux production wells with tubing, screens, and even syringes to simulate pumping water for water production. We had the students kind of also play around a bit, seriously though, but we asked them to try to produce 10 milliliters of water, and very few were actually able to do that. They were quite surprised. They were very gung-ho, and those that did drill 10 mils, they were starting to compare, like, why did your well work better than mine? And so some of the answers that they came up with was, oh, well, Miss Bautista, maybe I didn't drill my well too deep enough. And others were saying, Miss Torres or Miss LG, my well, I drilled it way too deep. So it's not working out at all. And this is really good real life techniques, you know, that we can help the students, especially those that are very interested in science and go further on into getting a science career, that planning and discussing with other agencies is very important. And these good number or amount of questions concerning their water was brought up about, is this water even safe to drink? Next slide, please. So from that question of contamination and is our water safe to drink, we turned those into our final experiment segment of the day, and that was regarding pollution sources and actual contamination of their aquifers. So the teachers assisted myself and each student, and we went around and we dumped contaminants in the form of a green food dye at the ground surface of the aquifers. And then we did another round of simulating precipitation, pouring, sprinkling water over their aquifer surfaces. And the students witnessed contamination infiltrating their aquifers. We also asked them to try and produce another 10 milliliters of water, and many syringes came up with green contaminated water. We asked them, why do they think that their water that they produced was contaminated? And many of them were able to call back to the water cycle that we had shown in the PowerPoint presentation of how water cycles through the different rock types on Guam, and during light or heavy downpours of rain, that factors into the infiltration of and even discharge of the water. And so we also discussed, like, where do you think these potential sources are? And many of the students are very aware that there's a lot of illegal dumping on the island. I didn't have to bring it up, and neither did the teachers have to prompt it. They said, Ms. Bautista, you know, even when we drive by, like from our home to our school, or we're waiting at the bus stop, there's trash on the ground. And so this experiment has been a very effective way to get to them that these are real life problems that are happening on our island. And hopefully, you know, we can continue bringing these, even these very simple mini experiments to the classrooms for more years to come. Next slide, please. And after having finished that final segment on aquifer contamination, and the students had still remembering, we wrap it up and we bring it back to them. And we say, do you want to be a freshwater ambassador? And of course, all the kids are going to say yes. You know, many of them have already kind of we've kind of moved along in the day. And so what I normally give them is we have them each bring out a pencil or a pen, and then we have a pledge on to be a freshwater ambassador for Guam. And so what each student does is I have them raise their right hand, and we talk about why they should pledge to not pollute, to not dump any liquid on the ground if they wouldn't drink it. We remind them that turning off the tap water is a way to conserve the energy resources used to bring it up from their wells, or the wells that they made. And then also to help their parents and help their school stop leaks by being very socially aware of what's going on in the infrastructure of their home and in their schools, their classrooms. And the very last one, which is their favorite, which is to volunteer to do coastal cleanups or trash cleanups, even just simply picking up the stray trash that flew out of the trash can or something around their school. Last slide, please. And so we're actually revamping our website for Guam Water Kids. And when it's back up, I invite you all to be able to go look for videos, handouts, and resources at www.guamwaterkids.com. I appreciate everyone coming in to the WERI Advisory Council today and for listening to one of WERI's outreach programs, which is the Guam Water Kids. So Cesar Masi and Joseph Saki, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kaylin, for that great presentation. It's the second year that you presented on Guam Water Kids, and we truly appreciate you joining us, especially from basically halfway around the world. So thank you again for being a part of this with us today. Of course, if anybody has questions for Ms. Kaylin, please share it in the chat. We also will be sharing our water resources issue form in the chat as well. And we encourage you to fill that out as well. But thank you again, Ms. Kaylin, for being a part of this and for presenting today. At this time, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next presentation from Dr. Nathan Habana, Surface Hydrology of the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer. We'll go ahead and pull that presentation up now.
All right, thank you. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay.
You're all set, Dr. Habana.
All right, thank you. And Hafaday, you know, 7 months ago at the Tropical Islands Water Conference, Dr. Heitz and I presented on delivering to you maps of our research project, the surface hydrology of the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer. The technical report is near done, and we plan to have that to you before the end of the year. Today, we present to you the results and access to this map. While we are fortunate in Guam to have a fresh water more than 300 feet deep below our feet, where we've been extracting up to 40 million gallons per day and where most of our residents rely on to live and do business, we must also be aware and careful of the aquifer's vulnerabilities and contaminants as we continue to develop above this valuable resource. Our fresh water is recharged by rain. However, stormwater may easily transfer undesired soluble material, contaminants from the surface and into our precious water source. That is, if we're not careful and strategic about the way we develop our island. This project examined our stormwater surface basin drainage system. Unlike the surface hydrology we see in valley watersheds in the south that discharges to the sea, the surface plateau basins on our aquifer capture stormwater, cascades through tributary watersheds, and drain into the freshwater lens at deep surface depressions at focal watersheds. Looking back 14 years ago, I remember applying GIS surface hydrology analysis to a new high-resolution digital elevation model and showing this to Dr. Heights. Dr. Heights looked at me like Emmett Brown with wide eyes in his way of saying, "Great Scott," talking about the future. I'm like, Doc, take it easy. Fast forward in the last 5 years through WERI RCOG consultant projects with Dr. Jensen, verifying suspect sinkholes, I've been examining thoroughly the surface hydrology of local areas on the NGLA and produced this map. So back to the future, we decided to do this for the entire aquifer. From our hydrologic analyses, we were able to boil it down with terminology in this diagram, a plateau basin of tributary watersheds that cascade into a focal watershed, often having a deep dolin. A tributary watershed consists of watersheds with shallow surface depressions that easily fill and overflow from one watershed into another. Think of it as a cascading series connected by overflow runoff paths that find its way to a deep surface depression that will not overflow the focal watershed. In a schematic cross-section, here's our diagram equation of a plateau basin showing how stormwater is drained into the freshwater lens. The surface hydrology may be our first line of defense, a map for strategic development towards protecting our precious aquifer. Because once it gets down there below the surface, it's just about impossible to remove. We might get lucky and miss a production well, but do we want to take that chance? The map I'm about to show you can help us make better decisions. And the results. Now I'm ready to share this map with everyone. If you have a QR code reader on your phone, I'm sure you do, you can access this map, and it is also available for you in the Guam Hydrologic Survey website under the library drop-down menu, select Interagency Maps. If you like a link, scroll to the top of the chat and select or copy the links for yourself. I'm WERI's operations manager of the Guam Hydrologic Survey and oversee the Guam Hydrologic Survey website development. Ms. Valerio, our web developer, will present details with navigation through our web products after my presentation. Let's look at the surface hydrology of the NGLA. So if you were going through the Guam Hydrologic Survey website, I was talking about selecting this drop-down menu and click Interagency Map, and you will see this page pop open, and you can click into different departments, and what I'll be talking about is the surface hydrology map. If you click that and click along, you'll be able to see our web map app. And our web map app is an online web map that lets you see the products we've worked on for the surface hydrology. Let me show you an example. Here's one called the Mokfok Basin. And in the Mokfok Basin, we have details that show how stream flow and water and tributary watersheds can flow down into a focal watershed down here called the Mokfok focal watershed. And in there, we can see all the flow directions and overflow runoff paths that move from one to another. And we've set the boundaries, and we've also show here the wells. The nice thing about this map is it's not a fixed map. You can zoom in and work with other people and talk about strategies. The nice thing about it is that you can turn off certain things if there is too much information showing, and you can adjust that. You could also look at the legend, and also you can add your own data to overlay where you're developing. And you can put shape files and KML files. Also, you could change the base map if you like. There's a base map gallery available for you, and change the way you like it to appear. My favorite tool here is the draw. I like to draw on it, and whenever you're having, you need a map and you need it now, just log on to our website and pick a nice color for you to draw on your map and talk about an area of interest, maybe right over here. And if you really want to stress a place out and put your arrow on it, you can select an arrow and point at it. So, and you can clear all that too when you're done. Another thing that we have featured here is a measurement tool. Of course, we'd like to know the distance from one point to another. And another favorite would be the print. Lets you print it in PDF directly or some other form. So this is an interactive map, a product, WERI Web Maps, and it's made available for everyone. Nice thing about this is whenever you're looking at a surface depression, you might be looking at whether it's going to affect the wells. The wells here are surrounded by its 1,000-foot radius and wellhead protection zone and a 300-foot radius. And you can see the basins and the watersheds. This is a more advanced and detailed perspective of it. Later on, I'm going to show you another perspective of the surface hydrology used for managing storm drains at developed areas and maybe reconfiguring, and you'll see in a little bit. So let's see. How's my time here? Have I gone over time?
You have a couple more minutes, Dr. Habana.
Okay. Let me undo this one then. All right, in a couple of minutes, you'll also see here, there's basin names. And in a couple of minutes, we're gonna talk about these basin names. So you can see throughout the map, the island, Fafaluk Basin, and so forth. So whichever area of interest where we plan to develop, and the concern is a sinkhole and a route to the aquifer, this is a good place to start, and it's a very useful tool. All right, I'm gonna switch now to another presentation, and let me get that up on screen. Okay, so I wanted to
really
yes?
quick, I noticed that we do have a question in the chat before we move on to your next presentation. What, if any, coordination has been done with DPW, which is the agency responsible for stormwater? We have that from Mr. Brett Rayleigh from the GWA Engineering Department.
Well, this is the first time I've unveiled this, so I haven't had any coordination. No one's called me yet. So now that this is available to everyone, we can, talk more about this and talk about managing the way or selecting configurations for what the plan would be. Yes.
Perfect. Thanks, Dr. Habana, for that response. And thank you, Mr. Brett, for that great question. You can go ahead and move forward with your next presentation.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to give these plateau basins names, and no better for me to do so through WERI ACM and with Commission, give me a second, please. Commission Inaan Lugar Guahan Committee. And fortunately, we have with us the 10th president of UOG, now the place name committee chair, por favor, si Dr. Underwood.
Well, thank you, Nate. And that was an excellent presentation. And I learned so much by working with you. Of course, one of the responsibilities of the Naan Lugat committee of this is really a committee of the Comisión Fino Chamorro. And one of our responsibilities is to ensure the survival and the revitalization of Chamorro place names, and of course to spell them in accordance with the orthography, which is all mandated by law. So we're not stepping out of bounds. And what happened is that when Nate first we discussed water basins, I asked him how water basin names were decided, and they said, well, it was just a bunch of scientists who got together and whomever, and they had names like Potts Junction and other places. And I said, well, why don't we screen those in terms of historical maps and information that we have? And we did that. And we went through a very extensive process, and these are the results of it. And of course, it was reviewed by the Comisión Fino Chamorro, and it doesn't really need any more review, because this most of these place names are kind of disguised to the general public unless they go into it. But it was an amazing experience, and we corrected some things which were out there, like the use of Finagagjan, which is totally in error almost in every map. Finagagjan is actually closer to GRMC in that general area than where it's commonly, even the school up there in Finagagjan Elementary, it really should be Finaguadzut. And this was decided after lots of consultation with informants, including Senator Casper Bauer, who's originally from that area. But I did want to point out that these place names are, these names for water basins are very interesting. Some of them, like over there, we call it Pati. The only time you ever really see this is in weather reports. Paddy Point, they say. And then as we kind of looked into it, and it was actually originally a Patay Point, which is to die in Tagalog and Philippine languages, which is actually Matay in Chamorro, but it's close enough, and historically it was Patay. We have Lalo Basin, which is over the area where they plan to build, where Governor Leon Guerrero has designated as an area where to build a new hospital. We also have Tailalo, which is an area north, near towards Litectan, towards the Retidian Point. And so you have Lalo, which means fly, and Tailalo, which means have no flies. But all of these names have been kind of gone through a series of maps and a series of review and a discussion with informants. Very happy that Dr. Habana and WERI were very collaborative and cooperative in this. And as you'll see through these names, people will start to get used to them. Some of them are pretty familiar, some of them are not very familiar. But as time goes on, we think that this is a really forward step in the maintenance and the restoration of original place names. We did take liberty a couple of times, especially where there was a water basin. The water basin didn't cooperate with us. You know, sometimes there were 3 or 4 different place names on the surface, and the water basin just wouldn't cooperate with us. So we took liberty. One we named down there by the Marine Lab, between Marine Lab and Pago Bay, we named Anufat Water Basin. It's actually, Anufat is actually the name of a Tauto Motna who lived in that area. Actually, he's one of the few Tauto Motnas that actually has a personal name. So we named that Anufat. There's some discussion over whether it's Maga or Ta'i, and you know, they're kind of overlap. So we decided on Maga. You know, so there's other areas like that. And we had one where the quarry is which is now, I think, called Paris Quarry, right? What is the original name, or what is the common name for that? Not the original name. It's a quarry, and you can see it everywhere. You know? Quarry. So, yeah. So what we did with that is we just called it Sanatuan, which means like rock quarry in Chamorro. So we did all these things, and we were creative only in a couple of instances, but overall it was a great project. And the most exciting thing about this to do this is that we're going to take this to the Center for Island Sustainability operation down there in Chamorro Village, and ask them to make on their 3D printer a map using these place names. And then that way we can then kind of correlate this to water kids and actually become a great educational tool. Because if you can see, kids starting to manipulate a kind of a jigsaw puzzle out of these maps, I think it'll reinforce the names. And people will start asking, what do these names mean? Why do they come from? Who gave them these names? And it will teach not just a whole lot about the water basin and our water resources. It would build a respect for the island itself and the people who named them. So I appreciate the cooperation very much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Underwood. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Underwood. There's a question for Dr. Habana from Captain Burden from Guam EPA. Dr. Habana, have you reconciled this with your sinkhole database? Do the focal points all correspond with known sinkholes? This will be very useful in moving forward with improvements to our wellhead protection rules.
Oh, well, the new all these fillable areas in the surface hydrology map is derived with a GIS analysis hydrology tools. So we look at how deep it is, and we always begin by calling them suspect sinkholes. Not all of them are sinkholes. And most of them are dolins. And later on, I'll point out some of the things we found in another map, a terrain analysis, and that leads to patterns with the geomorphology and the whole geology and faults and why these exist. And so, yes, I'd like to talk more about it and how to understand it. We're looking at doing a workshop on this with all our interagency partners, so we can all learn how to use this the way we see it and how it should be used. And of course, work together into coming up with solutions.
Thank you, Dr. Habana. And
I got one question for Dr. Underwood.
Yes, sir.
What's this basin right here? Everyone knew that was this area throughout, ever since I've been in Guam. We've really called this place Finagayan, Finagodson, yeah. and then Machananao, and now we find out we end up naming it Guaguadzon Basin.
Yeah, Guaguadzon, and that was verified by people who lived up there. And in fact, when I would ask them where is this located, it would naturally come out Guaguadzon, which I was not familiar with. There was also a little bit of struggle. This is going to be a surface area struggle between Machanao and Machananao. Because in pre-World War II maps, there was no Machananao, there was only a Machanao. And so, in fact, Machanao was its own municipality at one time. So trying to figure out where Machananao came from. So we avoided Machananao. I think we named it Astabayas, which was another name. And, we're assuming that Astabayas is an older name, and Astabayas is actually named after either a Spanish governor named Tobias or somebody named Tobias, because every time you see the word ash in front of a place name, as part of a place name in Chamorro, it refers to a person. So Aspengal refers to Pengal, Astumbu refers to Tumbu. So either Tumbu owned that land or is associated with it in some fashion.
Thank you, Dr. Underwood.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I tell you, Nate was
That was fun.
right on.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Underwood, and thank you, Dr. Habana. Our next presenter will be Miss Danica Valeria, and we're playing a short video about her.
Okay, let me share my screen. So good morning, everyone. I'm Danica, and I'm an undergraduate research assistant working as a web developer for the WERI and Guam Hydrologic Survey websites. And as a web developer, I help in the management of the website, design the web pages, display available reports and publications, and also maintain the databases and the maps available on the website. So before I start my little tour on the website, just a little bit about the website itself. So the Guam Hydrological Survey website is an online resource for the public providing access to water resources information and databases. It is in constant development as new information becomes readily available for public viewing, and with the considerations of the user experience in terms of like navigating and obtaining the information. And I'll provide a link to the website after my presentation. So without further ado, let's begin the tour of the main features and assets of the website. So the menu bar at the top is one of the primary ways that you would have to like navigate the website. So over here on the left, you would see that we have reports from, or access to reports from meetings, conferences, and status updates regarding water resources. So this includes like the state of the aquifer reports, which looks like this. The REO agendas, or the research, education, and outreach agendas, which look like this, and the page for sustainable management, which houses the GHS annual reports, as well as some sustainable management documents. And then, so moving forward, one of the main features of the website are two databases. So that's the borehole database and the chloride and production database. So you can access that by clicking over here on groundwater and then going to the borehole database. Then clicking this link will lead you to this page right here. And so the borehole database is basically a comprehensive log that contains information on the custodianship function, operational status, geological, hydrological, engineering details, and geological attributes of ground drilling and installed wells in the NGLA, or the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer. And some of the main features of this page is the file directory. When you click here, it would lead you to this file database where you can access files on the wells. Just go back to the previous page. And then when you scroll down, we also have like an Excel sheet available here for you to download, which just contains tabular form of the data that's on the borehole database file directory. And then as we scroll down the website, you can see that we have a collection of our borehole database Google Maps. So you can just filter through all the maps using the tabs here on the left side. So you can directly interact with the maps right here. But if you want an enlarged view, you can just like click over here and then it will open into a new tab, and then you can just explore from there. Then we also have some YouTube video playlists, which you can access over here for the borehole inspection downhole videos. And then the other database that we have available is the chloride and production database. So this is quite similar to the borehole database in terms of its organization of the data sources, analysis graphs, and maps available. So when you click here, it's a very similar interface to the borehole database where you have like all the files here. And then this will also open up the Google Maps for the chloride production. And then you can just play around in that in this tab. And then in the bottom here, we have the quarterly chemical default analysis PDFs for viewing. Then, so since the GHS website serves as an online resource, one of the key features is its extensive library, and you can access it through here. So basically, the library is an organized collection of scientific, engineering literature, consultant reports, maps, history, and technical reports that are pertinent to Guam's environment and water resources. So there are 6 main sections. So this includes the sort and search library, the maps and posters, presentation section, the interagency maps, and then we have multimedia publications and journals. So as you scroll down on the main library page, you can see that we have a comprehensive list of recommended sites, and as well as our list of interagency partners and resources that may be helpful for your convenience. And just to provide like a brief overview of what we have on this page. So we have access to or links to reports and publications, as well as contact information for the agencies that we have listed. And then moving forward, we have the sort and search library. So this section of the library provides access to free, publicly available literature and reports on water resources and environmental topics of the Western Pacific. And then to use this page, you can simply, or to sort and search through this page, as the name suggests, you can just click on these like arrows to sort it in either ascending or descending order by author, year, title, publication ID, or agency, or you could use the search bar right here on the top right. And then to open up a report, you would just have to click on the title, and it would just open a PDF on the next tab. So moving forward, we have the maps and posters page. So this section of the library lists available maps and posters from different agencies. And the files listed and linked on these page are mainly just like image files and PDFs, which you can download and view. So let's say we want to look at the NGLA. So it will go down here and we click on the map, and it'll open up the PDF in the new tab. So from there, you can just like download it and then have it for your own reference. So moving to the next section of the library, we have the presentation section. So this section of the library houses all the presentations that we have available from past workshops, meetings, and conferences. And then you would simply just like navigate to one of these headers over here, and then you would just click on the title or the section of the meeting, and then you'll download a PowerPoint or a PDF file that you can use or view. And then finally, we have our interagency maps, which Dr. Habana briefly highlighted in his presentation. So this page is in constant development as maps become readily available for public viewing. So this page is different from the maps and posters page that I showed earlier because it's more interactive. And some of the maps that we have available here are maps from WERI and maps from the Commission Ifino Chamorro. And then how to use this page, you would simply, after you navigate to the organization that you want to view the maps from, you would click on the map right here, or I have it open right here, and it will lead you to this page. And then it will show you just a preview of the map, as well as some of the details describing what the map and when it was last updated. And then below, we have some viewing options for your convenience. So if you want to view it on your mobile phone, you can use your camera to scan the QR code right here, and then open the link, and it will open up the map. And then the desktop view will just lead you to this link right here, where you can play around with the map, with like what Dr. Habana was showing earlier with the other map with the Chamorro names. And then if there's a PDF available of the map, we have it also available here for you to download. So in the future, we plan on uploading downloadable map content in this section. But right now, we don't really have anything available. But if you would like to go back to the main map page, you would simply just like navigate using this right sidebar back to the main page, or if you want to look at maps from different organizations through there too. And yes, so those are all the main features of the website, and that's all I have to show. But before I end my presentation, I could send a link to the website for you guys to view and as a point of reference. And that concludes my presentation on the Guam Hydrologic Survey website. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that great presentation. As a reminder that if anybody has questions, please do share them in the chat. We also previously shared the water resource issues form, and you can share your thoughts as well. If there's no further questions for Ms. Valerio, we'll go ahead and move to our next presentation from Dr. Nathan Habana. Once again, thanks so much, Ms. Valerio, for that great presentation on the Guam Hydrologic Survey website. Dr. Habana, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to you on your next presentation.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, so I call these the WERI web maps. It's like a map and an app at the same time. And I've pieced a few things together. And for the next few slides, I'm going to go through showing you, here, let me show you. Like what Miss Danica, Miss Valerio was talking about, you could access it through our website. But here, I've also pasted it in the captions, or I'm sorry, not the captions, but the chat, the links for every one of the maps I'm about to talk about. And I'll go down with the QR code, looking at some of the web maps that I've put together and worked with Miss Valerio. So the first one is the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer map, and here's a QR code, and you can have it on your phone. So let's look at that. Now, the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer map. Give me a second here. There you go. You've seen this. This is one of our early maps that with the basement topography. Now this has a basin that's different from what I was talking about, the surface basin. This is more of a subsurface basin, a groundwater basin delineated by the basement topography here that you see. And they have their own management basin zones here. It's, for example, the Machinal Basin. It covers from here to here. And the Upi Basin, you got, now I was working with also the Commission on renaming these basins. So instead of the Finagayan Basin, we now call it the Finaguadzuk Basin. And the Tomhum Basin, Hagatnya Basin, Pagu, and Manilao Basin. So if you zoom in, it more details come or show, and zoom in some more, and you'll have a little bit even more information about it, like the Santa Rosa Atacao Saddle or the Barragata Rise, and other information about this, its geology, like the Ludum Formation and so forth. And so if you need something to, and you can't roll the map with you because you like to leave it on your wall and don't want to take it down, but you want to bring it to your meeting and look at it, we have it now available. And you can, again, access our widgets here on the top right-hand corner and be able to look at that and examine it closely for the way we develop. So let me show you another map. Let me get back over here and pop this screen. Now, this is the nitrate analysis and NGLA nitrate analysis. If you could get a QR, if you could get that on your cell phone and follow along with me, or you could just watch. Let me see if I could get that tab to open. Give me a second here. Nope, that's not it. Okay. There it is. And this was made by my student, Jezrelyn Bulaklak, who was studying the nitrates at that time, doing the nitrate studies at the wells. And so you can see here, if you kind of zoom out, you can see it has a density heat map. So you can see where it is most dense by the way this heat distribution around where we have non-sewer system, septic tank maybe, or whatever it is that they're using to discharge the aquifer. And this is a whole big collection. This was requested from us by Moore and McDonald, the GWA, figuring out strategies for us to develop our wastewater system or managing our discharge into the aquifer. So this is really nice. For example, if you pop on the layers menu, it turns out that there's a parcel section in here. So let me show you that example somewhere down here. There it is. You can turn this on. There's even, I know there was a ancestral land easement and so forth, and Chamorro Land Trust, but let's look at the parcel. And you can control its transparency right here. So let's say you still want to see the aquifer beneath, and kind of lighten that and change the transparency. And you can turn off certain layers. If there's too much information for you, you can do so, but it gives us a whole big collection of information. And that was very useful for GWA at that time when they were thinking about how to strategize and which ones to go after first, where to focus and things like that. So take a look at that. It's a nice, nice work pieced together by Miss Bulaklak. And Miss Bulaklak now is in the Air Force, and she's gonna be a surgeon for the Air Force. Great student. Let me show you another map here. Here's the one I was talking about. Let me show you the, what is that called again? The QR code for that. There it is. Again, this is the surface hydrology, but this time with an imagery and a hillshade background. So sometimes we don't need all that, like I showed you earlier, that could be quite confusing for others to visualize. And this is a whole brand new layout that I'm fiddling around with. For this, for example, this is great for the developed areas. If we need to figure out a better system for determining where we should drain a place, or come up with a better strategic plan. This will be very useful also for DPW and all our interagency partners when we work together and we draw on this map. Another good thing here that I've added is this swipe tool. Check this swipe tool out. And if I was to put the LiDAR imagery background, you can look at the way we've changed in development. Like if you look at this area, or this area right here, you can swipe to it and look at it now. So that's pretty neat, that we have that capability, and it's now in your hands, right? So you don't have to worry about thinking about getting a GIS specialist too much now. You have all this information available to you. And last one, let me show the last one here. This last one is more for, it's great for geologists. I was working on this map with the surface hydrology, and Dr. Jensen happened to be walking by and saying, I want that map. And so I made one for him for the whole entire island. Let's look at that one. And with this, we're learning a lot about sinkholes and depressions, because this map really shows where the faults and the graben and the horst. You have two faults over here, and along faults, usually, you have these large depressions, and most sinkholes seem to string along these faults and where these depressions are. And it really elucidates that for us and give us an idea of the way what Guam had undergone. And also, when you're trying to look for a sinkhole, you really don't have a clue of what's going on when you're in the thick of the jungle and you only can see 10 feet ahead of you. That's what Dr. J would say. But when we start with something like this, we get an idea and maybe understand why that sinkhole is happening, or what caused that, and where are we geologically. And this kind of information is so useful for us. And it gives us, it has contours, and you can turn off things like that, and turn off the contours and turn on other features here. Like, for example, the geology map. What kind of geology do we have going on here? Is it the Barragata limestone or the Marion limestone? It's a simple, it's in your hands now. And that's it for my show. Thank you all. Any questions?
Hi, Dr. Habana. It doesn't look like we have any questions right now. But as a reminder to everybody, if you do come up with a question at some point, feel free to share it in the chat. We do have an open discussion coming later on. And we also have the water resource issue form that we've shared numerous times in the chat. So we encourage you to share your thoughts through there. At this time, once again, I don't believe we have any questions, but we thank you again, Dr. Habana, for that great presentation.
Thank you.
From here, we're going to go ahead and move on to Dr. Mark Lander for State of Climate 2021. Dr. Lander, you ready to go?
I think so. Tell me if the show pops up.
Perfect.
It did?
It's
Wow.
showing up right now. All
okay,
set.
Amazing. All right, good morning, everyone. Running a little late, I think, but here we go. I'm going to talk about, I got two talks. This one is the current state of the climate 2021, where we're at in the rainfall, the typhoons, temperature and sea level and so forth. The next one, I'll give some climate projections. This one, there's my cover. Nice picture moving up the back road to Anderson back in March. Go to the next slide. Oh, no, it takes a little while. Oh, I just want to throw out, my wife gave me an iPhone about 2 years ago. I found a use for it. Now I take millions of pictures of Guam, but mostly clouds and sea and stuff like that. So I've got beautiful pictures now, a whole bunch. There's a tornado, a tornadic waterspout we had on the 21st of October, 2021. The real deal, with a collar cloud, a funnel. I put this out on the internet, the Tropical Cyclone Bulletin Board. People chime back in about all kinds of details on it. I never heard if anyone saw it down in Inarahan. There's no other, I didn't read about it in the paper, but the real deal, the real thing. We get these things once in a while. Here's a regular water spout, pencil thin little thing that reaches down from a cloud, no collar cloud, but a little spray vortex on the surface of the sea. Here's another one close up with a tornadic water spout. Anyway, one of my friends on the bulletin board made a big deal out of the shear. Everything's tilted. It's important for forming tornadoes to have this kind of strong wind shear, and it lines up in the direction and helps keeps the rain shaft out of the tornadic vortex or the mesocyclone. Anyway, just all kinds of good stuff. Nice rainbows, another good use for my iPhone. Here we go. Another example of something that recently came up, these rain bombs. Very concentrated heavy showers, only a mile across, but 4 inches of rain in an hour. Kind of found some new things on why we get some of the rainfall. So one station, maybe Sume or Mount Chichau or something, gets 4 inches of rain when the rest of the island gets 0. So these are things that are lurking there, and it has big implications for trends and climate and so forth, climate extremes, whatnot. And so I'm working on a paper now about the Aurora Point thunderstorm and the rain bomb, which I'm going to coin the term. All right, state of the climate. The large scale pattern, ongoing La Nina, and I'll talk about sea level temperature and typhoons and rainfall. The state of climate, here's a map showing, or a time series of the ENSO index going back to 1995. You see when it's up in the pink, it's El Nino. When it's down in the blue, it's La Nina. And here we stand at the arrow there, the 2021. We've dropped back into La Nina. The index is kind of weak, but the weather patterns are, let's put it El Nino or La Nina on steroids here. Here's a map. When I would show a picture like this to my tropical class, I would expect them to identify the state of the climate just from the satellite picture. There's things on this picture that scream La Nina on steroids. Part of it is this ITCZ, the lack of a monsoon in Westpac, and this dry slot all the way along the equator, dry, 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 dry. When the winds are very strong easterly all the way across, it splits the sea, cold water comes up and it kills the clouds. So you get a big dry, they call it the cold tongue, but it's also very dry. Kapinga Marangi is ongoing drought right now because of the La Nina weather pattern. We're just getting these dinky little disturbances roll through every once in a while. These normally would be the next typhoons forming. In El Nino, they're out east and they are typhoons before they get to Guam. Now they're struggling to even become storms west of Guam. So that's La Nina again. Okay, now on to rainfall. Trends of heavy rain. Another batch of pictures. There's south and where is that? Near Maritza anyway, that the channel that gets corked up with bamboo. I took a picture with my iPhone of rain in the lower left. Kind of a stupid thing. Who would take a picture of rain? But I was trying to make the one really heavy rain day to see if anything would show up, and it kind of does. Okay, rainfall 2021. We did it. We're above average for the year, and thanks to a record wet October. October 21 had record rain at the airport. The 26.68 inches beat the old record of 26.48 in October 1953. But Anderson didn't make it because that very event that made the 1953 October so wet at the airport made Anderson insanely wet. 37 inches in October in 1 month. They had a tropical storm. Alice went by and it was very slow moving. They had 32.5 inches just the 2 days of the storm. They had a severe thunderstorm. 2 people airmen were burned by lightning. 4 people drowned in flooding. Brian Henry, all homes are flooded, inundated with debris 3 to 4 feet deep behind Tamuning. Large sections of Naval Station and Air Force Base underwater. Property damage. They said it was in excess of 100,000. Probably today it would be $1 billion the way inflation is going. Okay, I just showed that with Anderson. It's hard to beat that. That's a very wet, extreme wet month. But the airport, it made it. Record October. And now, just because of the October rains, we're kind of near normal, but October just bumped us some. Here's the actual monthly rainfall. And here's a cumulative rainfall. We were running along a little below normal. And in October, we bounced ahead. We surged ahead. We're about 8 inches above average now in both stations, the airport and Anderson. So we have a good year, a good water year, big wet October. Okay, now on to temperature. Not much to say. There's the graph. This is the climate that everyone talks about, global warming, the hockey stick, whatever. But Guam is a little more complicated. You see it kind of, who knows why, it was in the 1950s, seemed to cool a little bit. Then it warmed quite steadily from 1970s through the late 90s. And then kind of looks like it cooled off. So that meme that global warming stopped is not entirely false. It kind of did here. It's sort of flattened out there. And you can see it. There's the data. Here's some of the problems with the data. Here's the airport's temperature record. It's unusable. It's not usable for climate for various reasons of moving the station and putting in the automated equipment that screwed up a whole bunch of stuff. So only Anderson is a good station that the actual weather office here in Tejan it's hopeless. Don't even bother using it. Okay, skip. Now on to sea level. One of the big things that everyone's worried about is sea level rise. I always put this slide. I was hiking down at Anau, and I don't know if Robert changed the name of all these things. There's Patty Point, Anau Point on the far distance there, just on the right side, and then below me. Anyway, Anau I call it, and Anau Point, and then on to Patty Point. Each point there has a different name, so I'd have to check now what the names are supposed to be. I try to get them right. I'd like to call them the right names. Okay. Oh, let me go back. That sea level one, this is kind of interesting. The yellow line shows where the normal waves, the normal biggest waves of any year, make it to about the yellow line, and it strips the rocks of that green cover. Now in 1991, when WERI came along, it stripped it all the way back to the blue line, 40 feet. Everything was gone. You could hike the entire Northeast coast without vegetation, none of those vines and the pagu vines and whatever else they have up there. So that line is a historical high stand. It hasn't been achieved since 1991. WERI punched it back. Whoa, I heard something went on there. Maybe it was my own email. Okay, moving on here. Here's a sea level. I will always do something to the sea level that nobody else does. I split it into two epochs. One was the 1948 to 1997, kind of stable, slightly fell through that whole time period. Then after the 1997 epoch El Nino, the sea level jumped up substantially, just bounced up 10 inches and stayed up. And that effect is really due to the trade winds. It's not climate change. It's but you can see it dramatically, where it changed from red to green on the moving average is the step function jump. It jumped up and never looked back. And here we are in 2021. Very high sea level, even as we speak, it's 10 inches above average, very, very high right now. But only 20% of that is climate change. 80% of that is the trade winds pushing it up. Okay. Pacific, we're a world leader in sea level rise. For the most part, our sea level is way, way, way up out here. But again, the trade winds are the forcing. The blue line in the bottom panel is the trade winds that force the sea level here. And it's not climate change, much of it, very little so far, but the trade winds are forcing. And it's also making the sea level along California, and it isn't rising. In fact, it just stays the same or goes a little down because these stronger winds are just taking the whole Pacific basin and shoving the water to our side. Okay, sea level projections, you got everything under the sun. You read the Perker report that came out of Hawaii. They extrapolate along the red line. I extrapolate the one I got from my analysis on the black line. The green line shows you to get to 3 feet by the year 2100, you got to follow the green line. And the Perker report even mentioned something about Antarctic ice sheet shelving off and melting and causing an 8-foot sea level rise. But it's like, well, okay, if that'll follow the purple line, if that happens, and it'll do it in maybe 1 year. If it actually happened like that, it wouldn't be an increase like that. Anyway, sea level is a concern. It's coming up. Climate change is making it come up, and the trade wind forcing has set it up about 10 inches, and it'll always be that 10-inch setup unless the climate change makes the base go up. So that's what sea level is doing. Okay, typhoons this year were almost record low. Way, except maybe 2010, one of these years it'd be low, but down, 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 down. The typhoons from 1958 through the current, it's kind of noisy, a lot, a few, a lot, a few, a lot, a few, a lot. But on the long-term trend, down, down, down. We've lost 6 typhoons in this time series. There was 6 more typhoons per year than we get now. And if you take this moving average, what the average is now, we average, no, I don't think anybody has heard this or knows this, but we've lost 6 of our 20. So we're down to 13 or 14 now as an average, and it used to be up very 18, 19, 20. And here's the chart at the below. The black and the yellow shows the black are very active years for typhoons, and the yellow are quiet years, very quiet. And the white is in between. Notice the 90s. If anyone lived on Guam in the 1990s, see all those black, 1999, 1989, 90, 91, 92, Omar, 93, 94, 96, Dale, 97, Paka, and all those typhoons. And then 2002 was the last time Guam had a typhoon, 2002. Typhoon, well, you got to count Dolphin in 2015, but that was only in the far north. Okay, typhoons down, 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 down. Global tropical cyclone activity is also down. Even though the Atlantic went crazy. You heard about storm after storm after storm after storm in the Atlantic. Well, here's the Westpac numbers. We had 21 named storms. We've only had 8. Well, they had another one. I had 7 on my chart. 8, when you should have almost 15 by now. We usually get 18 by the end of the year. We got a long way to go. Major storms. These are the Cat 3, 4, 5. Supposed to be almost 9. We've only had 3 in the basin. So very, very low, almost record low Pacific tropical cyclone activity. Even the Atlantic basin, where there's nothing but typhoon, or hurricane, millions of people affected by this hurricane, that hurricane, blah, blah, blah. They've had 7 hurricanes, which is normal. They had the 7 and 7. It's like, well, okay, you wouldn't think the Atlantic was normal given the media coverage of their season. Their number of named storms, however, is way, way, way up. 7 hurricanes, 14 tropical storms. Even us, 8 typhoons, 13 tropical storms. This is really weird because it should be the opposite. On the long-term statistics, we get more typhoons than tropical storms, 18 versus 10. The Atlantic, same way. You should have 7 hurricanes and 6 tropical storms. But they're being inundated with tropical storms, which there's reasons for it. This sort of naming all the little short ones and small ones and unusual subtropical ones. And they're ramping up the numbers, but actual hurricanes is average. Okay, Westpac typhoons 2021 on the left, extremely quiet, just extraordinary. Nothing in Micronesia. Some of the disturbances roll through that later become some of these storms. Versus 2015 in El Nino area, look at the difference on the right, just storm after storm after storm. Typhoons, even when they're going past Guam and Saipan and through our islands and even out in Micronesia further. Okay, does this work? Yeah, here's 2015. Very busy year. Look at Guam and Saipan are like a nexus for storm after storm after storm. Now we get to, here's another look at some different years. I'll blow past this one. One last thing is, here's a climate projection, but I'll get that in my next talk about. Some of the projections actually cut us in half. Well, already been cut by 33%, but some of the models suggest a total loss of 50% by the year 2100. Okay, climate change. No, what do we got after typhoons? And so, of course, I think I'm done. So I did typhoon, sea level, rainfall. Yeah, did I do rainfall? Yeah, I did. So I'm done. I got a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's for another time.
Thanks, Dr. Lander, for that great presentation. And I'm sure we'll be able to share everybody the presentation after the meeting. So we'll make sure to share that information as well. Thank you again for that great presentation. From here, we're going to go ahead and go straight into the next presentation to catch up on our time for geological features of a discharging coastal cave. And so that'll be Miss Maria Villarreal, and we'll go ahead and be sharing that now. Thanks again, Dr. Lander, for that great presentation.
Half a day. My name is Maria Joni Villarreal, a graduate student and research assistant for the Water and Environmental Research Institute at the University of Guam under the advisement of Dr. John Jensen. And this poster is about the hydrogeological and speleogenetic characterization of a discharging coastal cave, a Zuzu cave in Northwest Guam. In this poster presentation, I will show you what we have learned from exploring and mapping this cave. Aquifers in karst environments present special challenges because they are characterized by complex plumbing composed of three-dimensional networks of fractures and conduits. Among karst aquifers, carbonate island karst aquifers are even more complex because the limestone bedrock retains much of its original porosity, and the fresh groundwater resides in dynamic equilibrium atop the underlying salt water. The Northern Guam Lens Aquifer is a carbonate island karst aquifer from which 40 to 44 million gallons per day of fresh water is withdrawn from between 100 and 120 wells to supply 90% of the drinking water for the island's more than 159,000 residents. The existence of coastal freshwater seeps and springs and submarine groundwater discharge is an inherent feature of the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer. Among the mapped seeps and springs along the northwest coast of Guam, the highest point concentration discharge was observed in Azuzu Cave, measured to be at least 2.3 million gallons per day. As you can see in the location map, it is also located at the tip of a fault structure, which makes it even more interesting and the geology expected to be complex. In this study, we explored and investigated Azuzu Cave to understand the discharging phenomenon of the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer. My primary objective for this research is to examine and document the geological features of Azuzu Cave and the hydrogeological behavior of the groundwater discharge associated to it. To do this, I looked at both the surface and subsurface features in the study area to examine the karst features above and below. For the surface, I used lighter point cloud data processed into a digital elevation model to identify and characterize surface features such as depressions and lineaments. Subsurface study required good old exploration and survey and traveling 30 minutes by boat to get to the study site. Using DISTOX, a digital surveying tool specific for cave mapping, and using software Topodroid and Therian, I was able to create accurate maps of Azuzu Cave. So illustrated in this poster are the plan and profile view maps of Azuzu Cave, highlighting some cave features that we've mapped and inventoried. The narrow entrance of the cave is at sea level. It opens into the main chamber, which is a big room with high ceiling and big stalagmites that goes up to the ceiling. From the main chamber, it tapers into a narrow and low ceiling passage towards the dog's leg, a tight crawl space that challenges one's flexibility. Moving further along the cave, the low ceiling passage leads to another big room where the presence of brecciated rocks was first recognized. And in this room, ceiling slab breakdowns lay on top of huge toppled or broken stalagmite. And this is called the brecciated room. In two places, we noted the presence of air drafts at Daw's Leg and at the brecciated room, which suggests that the walls are fractured enough to allow for a nice breeze to travel all the way in. There are varieties of speleothems in the cave, draperies, soda straws, massive and composite stalagmites, all indicating that the past and present hydrogeological conditions that is conducive for their formation. The most striking feature we discovered in this cave is a pool, which is essentially the water table, observed to rise and fall with the tide. And the total mapped cave distance is at least 130 meters. Azuzu Cave exhibits a hybrid morphology. It has a dissolution features archetypical of a flank margin cave, that which forms synchronous with sea level position. At present, most dissolution occurs at the water table where fresh water infiltrating from the surface mixes with salt water. And this mixed water facilitates aggressive and fast dissolution of the limestone bedrock at the freshwater saltwater interface. The water in the cave pool rises and falls with the tide, but is calm, gently flowing, and relatively fresh in contrast to the fast flowing salty discharge at the entrance, despite being only 55 meters apart. This suggests that the huge volume of water that discharges from the cave is coming from elsewhere. Speleothems in the Azuzu Cave, such as stalactites, stalagmites, soda straws, and draperies, are indicative of a hydrogeological cave system that persisted for a few thousand years, albeit that which belongs to a vadose-phreatic type of dissolution. Fracture and collapse features are present at every corner of the cave as well. The cave features mapped and inventoried reveals the significant influence of faults and fractures on both the hydrogeology and speleogenesis of this discharging coastal cave. Geologic features such as faults can permit or hinder water flow through certain zones, thus forcing water through well-defined paths, as we believe is the case for Azuzu Cave. This cave research was possible through the generous funding and support of NASA EPSCoR, WERI, and the University of Guam. And that concludes my presentation. Si Jus Masi.
Once again, that was a presentation on the geological features of a discharging coastal cave. Thanks so much, Ms. Maria, for that great presentation. We're going to now move on to the 3D groundwater model, wastewater nitrogen solute transport. Mr. Fagan, are you logged on? We're going to go ahead and launch your presentation. Once again, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll share them with the presenters. And we'll also be accepting questions and concerns through the water resource issue form, which we've shared numerous times in the chat. Without further ado, Mr. Fagan.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Fagan Mathis, and for my thesis, under the guidance of Dr. Habana, I'll be looking at wastewater and solute transport, and we'll analyze a 3D model that shows the behavior of nitrates in groundwater to better understand the surrounding wells of the northern Guam Lens aquifer, particularly in the region of the new Swamp Road development plan. So this will be a quick presentation. I'll provide a brief introduction. We'll talk a bit about the area of concern. We'll cover the software and what the objective is, and then I'll conclude. So some background. WERI has compiled historical data of nitrate concentrations from GWA records for 146 wells from across the aquifer dating from the 1980s. The figure you're looking at shows the nitrate concentrations as of January 2019. So 58% of the wells show an increase in nitrate levels, 38% show no trend, and approximately 4% show a decrease. So the general observation is that there seems to be an increase in nitrate levels. The most likely sources of nitrogen concentrations in the groundwater, which has seen economic growth with increased urban concentrations and new expanded residential developments above the aquifer, are sewage accidentally percolating from leaking sewage lines and effluent discharging from septic tanks. So according to the cesspool and septic tank elimination study done in May 2021 by GWA, in sewered residential subdivisions of northern Guam, 13% of customers are being charged for water services, but not sewer, though some may actually be connected to the sewer. This may suggest an impact on the nitrate levels. So our area of concern, well, we plan to look at the transport of nitrates and their effect on the production wells along Swamp Road with consideration to the new Swamp Road development plan. So our modeling strategy will be to firstly establish a control basis, which entails building a model without using a septic system. Thereafter, we will build a model that will include a septic system, allowing for percolation of nitrates. Nitrate levels will be increased through iterations, and the impact on the surrounding wells will be analyzed. So we'll be utilizing GMS ModFlow USG to construct the model. The model will include ground flow based on the topography and the interface through the karst aquifer. As will be mentioned by Mr. Kasi, who is in the process of calibrating his model of the Jigo-Tumon Basin, which will be used within my model to analyze the impact of groundwater flow as it relates to the nitrate levels. We have engaged the Aquaveo GMS software developing team and are able to correspond with them directly regarding facilitation of the software. This has and will allow us to fully utilize the software capability, thus improving the overall quality of the model. So one thing to recognize, as mentioned by George Fox, essentially all models are wrong, but some are useful, which is exactly what we intend to achieve. We aim to produce a reliable model. We intend to provide an informed and technical advice for management and policymakers. We do have some supplementary objectives to establish if there's a need for further data collection, to obtain a better understanding of the NGLA, and then just to further evaluate GMS and its future use. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank Ms. Maureen McDonald of GWA and Ms. Jezrelyn Bulaklak for their previous work in nitrate nitrogen concentrations in the NGLA and their analysis of trends and potential sources. Furthermore, I'd like to invite you all to my thesis proposal that will be presented in January 2022 next year, where we hope to be further along our analysis. I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much, Mr. Fagan. If you don't mind, if you could just share the information for your thesis that you just mentioned in the chat. I'm sure that numerous people would be interested in attending, and you can share that in the chat so we have that information for everybody. Once again, thank you for that great presentation. And we'll now move on to Dr. Yiming Wen. Dr. Wen, I see you online.
Yeah. Okay, let's get started. And my topic focuses on trends and the patterns of salinity levels in the Guardian Basin. The next one. So the presentation will be composed of objectives and the data collection, processing of chloride data, and analysis of chloride data, and figure out patterns and trends of change in salinity levels in the sub area. And then lastly, just discuss about conclusions and the future work. Next one. So the objectives focus on collection and processing of chloride data in Flint Guardian, analysis of chloride data in Flint Guardian, and the evaluation of patterns and the change of trends of salinity levels in Flint Guardian. And next one. So the data collect from GWA and the well locations. There's a lot of other faculty here that have done. And other data will including DM and precipitations and well locations, land cover, land use information, and others. I use those data to figure out the kind of the relationship between chloride levels and other factors affecting salinity levels. The next one. So the start area to focus on in the Guardian, and here shows where it is. The next one. And this shows geological features, and the northern part of it's most composed of limestones. The next one. So the data collected including chloride data and LiDAR, DM, and well locations, climate data, precipitation, temperature, or extreme events or others, and land cover land use informations. And next one. Analysis, the next one. Maybe click again. For chloride data, based on the operation time of different wells, and we can get data of chloride back to January 1973 for F1, and others some 70s, some 80s, and depend on the operation date. And this shows the chloride change over time, as old as 1973, and sometimes 80s, 90s. Just click this kind of loop of some changes. Maybe just click once. Okay, then that's fine. So based on analysis of chloride and over the years and decades, and the left side shows the wells with the problem of salinity more than 250 milligram per liter. As you can see, and the wells F4, wells F10 to 13, and for some times got problems of high levels of chloride. And the next one based on local benchmark of 150 milligram per liter, but less than 250 milligram per liter. You can see and all the wells and close to coast, and some wells and maybe next slide shows where it is located, and F13 and the D wells and 15, and all those wells, and some wells you can see the line, and from F1 to F4, we'll get potential high level of salinity levels over years. And next one. So, and this pattern you can show, and the wells, most wells get problem with salinity levels located in basal zones, and just one located in F12 located in peribasals. And for all wells, it's one wells located in suprabasals. And most wells are located in peribasals, okay, at less than 250 milligram per liter. But look at the right side ones. If you look at the local benchmark value of 150 milligram per liter, about less than 250 milligram per liter, and all the wells from the line of F1 to F4, and all the wells coast to and coastline, and there's many wells in peribasals, and all wells looked in basals. You can see kind of potential salinity levels or problems. Next one. So just click inside the video clip and shows and all the wells with the problem salinity over years. Can you click once inside the box? The couple of milliseconds, it shows, oh, it not show up, that's fine. And just suppose the two short video clip that shows and how and some wells with problem of salinity to change it and locations, and also show up on the sample dates. And another one, this one just shows the potential problems of salinity, just like the salinity levels more than 150. I mean, the chloride concentrations more than 150 milligram per liter, but less than 250 milligram per liter. Can you click inside the box? It show up this, yeah. Just play. Just a couple of seconds, not long.
Dr. When it's not saying
it's not working.
It's not working.
Okay, that's fine, and it should be just show up, and similar to previous ones. If you got problems, just show up on the levels, the values, and also locations of wells. And this is just a potential problem, same one. It shows the levels and also locations, and we can look at the how they change trends, the location change or values change. So we can see the patterns on some clustered wells. Most located in basal zones, and many located in peribasal zones. But just one wells located in suprabasal still get kind of potential problem. I don't know what's going on. So what's going on this one? It looks weird. Okay. So let's just show some slides and to figure out the relationship between some factors affecting level for salinities. Here's you look at the relationship between chloride levels and the precipitation and values, and it just shows some wells. And here shows F4 because the problem with salinity levels. And to look at precipitations, it kind of increase of precipitation just affect a little bit, not too much of chloride. The next one. The same patterns to F10 and increase of precipitations for long-term base, and the chloride it decrease a little bit. But look at short terms, maybe we get different patterns. So I will not talk about this one today. So next one, the same patterns for F13, but I did not show up another two wells, and wells F15 and 16, and these wells show different patterns. For long-term base, the increase of precipitations can also, and chloride levels increase a little bit almost stable. So that means for some wells, now the chloride concentrations may be not affected much by precipitation, maybe other factors, maybe sinkholes, maybe human activities. So we'll look at to see what's going on. The next one, almost done. If you look at the relationship between chloride and production information, here shows the F10, increase of precipitations and the decrease of chloride concentrations. And next one is okay for F13. Looks like well productions did not affect much of chloride concentrations. And for some wells, an increase of productions, decrease of chloride, and increase of productions pumping rates, and increase of chloride levels. It's kind of the relationship between chloride levels and production information is kind of dynamic. So let's just suppose production up and the value of chloride concentration should be down, but actually not. So the relationship between chloride levels and the production is dynamic. So we will look at the details to see what's going on. And next one. So based on analysis of chloride levels and over years in space, and most wells with chloride problems, solid levels, are located in, you can see on the slide, and located in basal zones coast to coastline. And many of wells with potential problems of salinity levels are located in basal zones and also peribasal zones. And just one well located in suprabasal zones got problems. So maybe affected by something, so some factors we need to know to look at or to see what's going on. And that's it. Any questions?
Half a day, everyone. As a reminder, if you have questions, please share them in the chat. We do have a kind of a time crunch. So Dr. Wen, what we'll do if there's any questions, we'll send them your way. And if you could respond directly to the chat as well. At this time, we're going to go ahead and move on to Mr. Jovik Kasi for calibrating the Jigo Tumon groundwater model. So we can go ahead and start right there. Jovik?
Good morning, I'm Jovik Kasi, an undergraduate in mathematics and computer science and working as a research assistant under Dr. Abana, and I will be talking about the progress made on calibrating the Jigo Tumon groundwater model. And our objective is to model the Jigo Tumon basin and calibrate to existing observation and production well data. And to create the model, we used the Aquaveo groundwater modeling system mentioned by Fagan earlier. And the model currently uses 19 layers with more layers in the freshwater lens and transition zone. And we also work alongside Tran, a consultant from Aquavea, to assist us in progressing with the model. And here's a 3D oblique view of the model. And if you look towards the left, which is the ocean side, you can see the layers of the model, and it gets adjusted with the depth of the volcanic basement as it goes inland. And here we cut along a cross section from the bottom left to the thumb of the basin. And in blue, you can see the freshwater lens form, and it thins as it goes towards the ocean. And in the green colors, we have the transition zone, and the pink, we have the saltwater. And currently, we're trying to get the freshwater lens and transition zones represented better in the model. And here are the 3 observation wells in the Jigo Tumon Basin, which we use to calibrate the model to. So we have the wells EX7, EX10, and Gura Dededo. And we run the model in a 180 days no pumping scenario and record the results. And comparing the results to the observed data from the observation wells from Becca-Dorr's research, we find that the salinity from the model obtained is higher than what is observed. And we are working on trying to get that freshwater lens and transition zones calibrated to the observed data. And after calibrating to the observation wells, we'll calibrate the model to the production wells represented by the black circles. And we will run pump tests from the pump rate data and chloride data given by GWA, and also using the data from the 2015 Gingrich base case if the wells are not updated, and also for the military wells. And once we can get this calibrated, it can be used as a base for future projects like Fagan's in modeling nitrates. And a similar process can be used to model the other basins as well. Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, Jovic. As a reminder to everyone, please share your questions in the chat. Jovic will respond to them directly. And of course, you can always share your thoughts with the water resource issue form that was shared numerous times in the chat. Once again, thanks, Jovic, for that great presentation. At this time, we'll go ahead and move to Ms. Natalie Bravo for her presentation, Establishing Groundwater Protection Zones in Guam.
Hi, thank you. Would you mind sharing your screen with my slides?
Sure, that should be pulling up in just a minute.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you. I'll let you know when to switch slides. So thank you, everybody. My name is Natalie Bravo, and I am a first-year graduate student in the EV program working under the advisement of Dr. Wen. The focus of my thesis and work as a research assistant is Guam's groundwater protection zone for the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer. Before we leave this first page, the image here is Guam's groundwater protection zone map for those of you not familiar. Legally speaking, this zone is a series of 63 survey points, which create the shape you see. The size and shape of that polygon is based on hydrogeological investigations from the 1980s with some practical modifications. GPZs have far-reaching environmental, social, and economic implications. In Guam, the GPZ map influences land use and development, septic tank regulation, and water quality policy. Around the world, GPZs can also bear on mineral water rights, contamination abatement requirements, compensation programs, and more. It's fair to say that although this map looks very humble, it is incredibly important to a community and its vital drinking water resource. Now, although Guam law provides for periodic updates of the GPZ, the map has not been updated since its adoption in 1986. Since the 1980s, though, hydrogeological understanding of the NGLA, GIS mapping technology, and delineation methodologies have advanced. This suggests that there may be untapped value for Guam in updating this GPZ. An updated map could improve the efficiency and effectiveness of policy and better align protections with current scientific understanding. An updated map format, by which I mean upgrading from a printed low-resolution map to a GIS-based map alone, could be low-hanging fruit and help improve policy implementation and ease of use. From my understanding, it is this opportunity, combined with a variety of concerns among our community, that has motivated and that justifies re-looking at this important topic from a scientific perspective. Next slide. This slide shows two maps from the work in the 1980s that led to the current GPZ. I want to emphasize two things here. First, a lot of work went into developing this map. Topographic surveys, geophysical investigations, exploratory wells, mathematical modeling, and hydrogeological evaluations. Second, I want to point out that this is not as complicated as the lower, smaller map you see on the bottom right, which is a groundwater management map that also came out of that same 1980s report that led to the GPZ. This lower bottom right map is a map used by experts in the field developing and managing areas for development of drinking water. Of course, there are huge similarities in the underlying science of these two maps. They serve different functions and therefore present different information to the intended consumer of the maps. What I want to emphasize here is the challenge of boiling a lot of science down into a map that can be used by policymakers and the community. Next slide. What I'll talk about for the rest of my presentation is just my preliminary plan for taking on this topic and taking a fresh look at the GPZ. What you'll see is that there's a lot of layering of topics and issues here. It's a building up of complex topics and then distilling that into something simpler. It's also a literal layering of maps, different thematic maps in GIS. So the first thing to really do in this work is to identify the basics. What is groundwater? How do we define that? What is groundwater protection? So for example, on the last slide, I talked about groundwater management and development. So how is groundwater protection different than that? What is a groundwater protection map? It's a management tool to protect existing and possible water production areas. So what is the significance of its role as a policy and management tool? Next, I'm going to get into the background, look back at all of these historical reports from the 80s and 90s to understand how we have the map we have today. And then pick up all the developments in our understanding of the NGLA that are relevant to this map. Then look at how is the map used, all of the laws and regulations that reference this map. I also want to reach out to stakeholders to understand the management issues and the needs. I think that that's really important to incorporate into the work, even if my work isn't updating policy. It's so important to know how a map is going to be used and who the end user is when developing that map. Next slide. So the first step is to identify the groundwater. What is the resource that we are trying to protect? So this is looking in GIS and layering maps, looking at aquifer basin boundaries, looking at those groundwater zones inside each basin, the basal, the parabasal, and the suprabasal zone. Looking at water quality and quantity, spatial temporal trends, and looking at aquifer properties and well performance. So again, really understanding what are the groundwater resources that are the highest potential for drinking. The second is to analyze contamination sources. So that's everything from looking at sewer line routes and septic tank locations and spatial densities, looking at land use and environmental factors, and looking at infrastructure such as roadways and storm drainage systems. So understanding again, where are the weak points and where can the contamination come from? Next slide. Putting those two topics together, the resource and the potential contamination, we can evaluate vulnerability of the aquifer. So looking at those spatial temporal analysis of factors or thematic maps impacting vulnerability. So those are the intrinsic aquifer specific attributes, the infiltration conditions, both intrinsic and man-made. So that might be things like ground cover, precipitation, and then looking at those contamination source factors. And then I'm going to draw some implications for groundwater protection. I'm still early on in the work and not sure what the end result will look like. But the goal, bare minimum, is at least to understand the implications for zone delineation and for policy, and hopefully come up with some recommendations. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Please email me or chat me any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie. I just want to let you know that we do have a couple of questions and comments in the chat for you. If you could respond and so everybody can see your responses. And thanks for that great presentation again. At this time, we'll go ahead and move on to the next presentation, our last presentation for today, actually. Guam climate projection, sea level, rainfall, and typhoons, presented by Dr. Mark Lander.
Okay, the lightning round. Let's see if I can find it here. Share, and it comes up. Start the show. So let me know if it comes up.
Yes, Dr. Lander, it's up.
Okay, it's a lightning round, 5 minutes. Okay, there's my cover slide. My iPhone again, I'm making good use of it. Nice sunset out behind the university, House 5. Another picture of a thunderstorm anvil with my title, Climate Trends and Projections for Guam. Let's find the little arrow to move it on here. Climate trends, temperature, rainfall, sea level, and typhoons, those 4 climatic variables. Of course, there's other things of climate change, species extinction, sea level acidification, whatever, but those are the 4 climatic ones there. Temperature, another iPhone picture. I managed to get all kinds of things now with my iPhone. Temperature trends, there's not much to say about it. There's devils in the details. Up for the 1950s, down up very quickly to the mid 90s, and then kind of flat. And the actual temperature, the minimum temperature is going down. And that's kind of common everywhere in my condition. The max temperature goes up, the min goes down. at a lot of stations, and there's reasons for it, and it's nothing to do with the actual weather. It's the automated equipment and the way they record the data, but whatever. So the average comes out. You can see that it's kind of complicated, and so what to make of it? You know, like the Anderson Air Force Base, I used the TGen weather forecast, no good. All kinds of errors, mismatched data sets, equipment error. Everything under the sun is wrong with this data. It becomes so difficult to make sense of it. But I've gone through actually over 1 million hourly observations to ferret out and get the right information on this. Okay, ASOS ruined everything. That's automated equipment. Okay, ups and downs. Let's go. It's a 5-minute round. Temperature projections. It depends on the representative concentration pathway. If you go a low emission scenario, it goes up 1 degree Celsius. If you take RCP 8.5, it goes up 3 degrees Celsius, which is almost 6 degrees Fahrenheit by the year 2100. That's a tall order. There's not a lot of people, they actually use the worst case scenario to give models and tell us things. Here's Guam getting warmer. You see the RCP on the graph here, what's done on the left, the little linear ones going up 1.5 or going up 3. I threw in a sort of a representative time series. It may be the pathway to get to it. You see, the FCP 8.5 plus 3C, that's a tall order to get there, but you know, whatever. They're not really projecting that. That's the worst case scenario. Somewhere in the middle maybe is a likely scenario. Anyway, rainfall, there's my iPhone again, walk out in the rain, take a picture of rain. Who would ever do that? But I did that. I'm kind of proud of that picture. You can see the drops. Guam annual rainfall, highly variable, wettest year 1976, driest year 1998. That's kind of true of, well, the driest year is an ENSO related thing, true of everywhere in Micronesia. There it is. Where do we stand? Guam rainfall moving some. I'll go faster than this. Some statistics, days over 1 inch, days over 2 inches, days over 4. There's 0.46% of all days when it rains is at or above 4. Here's a whole table of all kinds of rainfall statistics that might be useful to somebody. Here's a bunch of more, the days, count of days of 1.5 inches or more, 2 inches or more, 4 inches or more, 10 inches or more, etc. And kind of the return period analysis of different intensities of rainfall. A little bit complicated because typhoons mess everything up. It rains so hard in typhoons that from 1 hour to 24 hours, it doubles the amount of rainfall that you can get from anything else. Okay, here's rainfall trends. It's getting wetter, but the 1950s was particularly dry. So if you remove the 1950s, there's no statistic. It's still getting wetter, but the trend becomes not statistically significant. By month, it's getting wetter in the rainy season and drier in the dry season. This is opposite climate projections. They say we're going to get drier in the rainy season and wetter in the dry season, but the historical trends are opposite. Okay, rainfall projections. Here's a typical global warming scenario. Here's something that was done for CERDEP by USGS, showing the present distribution. The RCP 4.5 scenario, it actually gets wetter. Stays about the same or gets a little wetter in places. It doesn't really get drier till you ramp it up to the RCP 8.5. Then it dries out. And there's a reason. It dries out the annual by 5 to 7% on the annual, but it's the rainy season gets drier and the dry season gets wetter. And why? It's because the rainy season gets drier because there's a huge reduction of typhoons in the very warm worst case scenario. The typhoons fall off a cliff, almost like they've been doing already, but it gets even worse. We get so much fewer that their contribution to our rainfall, their 20% contribution to our rainfall gets cut in half. So that's right, 5 to 7% is about the 5 to 10 inches in a year we would lose from cutting the typhoons down. Okay, I wrote in a paper, a rain bomb, a new sort of phenomenon here that I'm zeroing in on, a cause of very heavy rains, cause of drownings. People go out, rain bombs occur on nice days. They form a cumulonimbus, a lone thunderstorm forms over the mountains or over Rhodey Point and dumps 4 inches in 1 hour. Okay, on. There's a nice close-up of a rain bomb over Apra Harbor. These things are just awesome kind of things. It's amazing. Nice rainbow from my iPhone. Sea level again. You've seen this from my talk before. Sea level rise. The trade winds are forcing it. It's going up, but it was steady. And then it's jumped up in 2000 or 1998, and it stayed up again. It's been steady up without any major increase or decrease. It's just been up because the trade winds get stronger. Sea level projection showed that onto the typhoons. Typhoon trends I showed last time, down. Here's 2021, the blue. We're just hopelessly low on typhoons, but people like this, I guess. Sometimes I ask, if you like your climate change, can you keep your climate change? We're losing typhoons like sand in an hourglass. There's that graph I showed before, the black and yellow, the busy years and the quiet years. Notice a big preponderance of quiet years since the year 2005 or 2006. We haven't had a busy year since then. Okay, that you've seen before. This you've seen before, the busy typhoons when it's El Nino. That's again I think I'm done. There's an El Nino effect. El Nino makes them form out east of Guam and they run us over, and La Nina, they form near Guam and then don't become typhoons till they get near Philippines or Taiwan. Okay, that's it, the lightning round. Lastly, I'll just leave with the good news. Who in this audience has heard that in a warmer world, the number of typhoons in Westpac could be cut in half? It's already been cut by a third, by something. I don't know, climate change or what, ENSO or PDO, but global warming projections, truly, really, the models, not all of them, but quite a few of them show substantial reduction. We lead the world in typhoon reduction, and there's reasons for that too, and I can't elaborate, there's no time, but we're the big losers, the biggest loser in the typhoon game in climate change. That's it. Lightning round, I'm finished.
Thanks, Maasi, Dr. Lander, for that great presentation. At this point, we're now in the open discussion section. We don't have much time, but I'm going to go ahead and just read out loud the questions that we received in the chat, and we can go from there. From Ms. Vanji. Hi, Ms. Vanji. What is the prediction for typhoons in 2022? And how much recharge to the aquifer is attributed to typhoons?
2022 should be more than this year. This year it's just being killed, not just by La Nina. La Nina, sometimes they're still the same in the basin. We get fewer, but this year something is just crushing them. It is whatever has been causing the reduction for the last 70 years is acting in full effect with other effects to just crush the typhoon zone. So 2022, unless it's the onset of El Nino, the onset of El Nino is when you go bonkers. When, in fact, if it's not El Nino, I just say no typhoons for Guam. That's my bet. 9 times out of 10, that'll be a correct prediction. If it's not El Nino, if it is El Nino, 1 in 3 years has a typhoon on Guam. If it's not El Nino, it's only 1 in 10. So without any other knowledge, if it's not El Nino onset, no. There'll be none on Guam, but it'll be busier in the basin. That's my forecast. And the recharge, a lot of it's lost. It's so heavy rain, it runs off. You'd have to talk to Dr. Jay Moore. 20 inches in a day, it dumps in, it floods out the fast pathways, even through the Piggy Cave and conduits like that. There's mud plumes, even outside of the sea cliff in northern Guam when a typhoon comes. The trade winds changing this is interesting. That last question, what caused a change in trade winds? Nobody knows. And the reason that it's peculiar is climate change models do not predict that. The projections for trade winds are not for stronger trade winds. They're for weaker trade winds. The Walker circulation gets affected. So the climate change projections almost unanimously say the trade winds get weaker. They got stronger. Therefore, the answer is natural variability. That's what, if it's opposite the climate change, then you just throw it over the other side and say that it's natural variability. And what that is, there's suggestions and reasons, but nobody knows for sure. And I think I covered all the questions. Less typhoons, less insurance. Yeah. Hope, less typhoons. I'm going to sell my typhoon shutters for scrap. That's my action. Make some money.
Thanks, Dr. Lander, for those great thoughts. We appreciate it a lot. What we're going to do is I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Jensen, who's going to facilitate a little bit more of open discussion. But thanks again, Dr. Lander.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Before we run out of time, I'd like to invite some of our partners to share some of their thoughts. We emphasized the theme of partnership, starting with the president's presentation this morning and his remarks in my presentation. And I'd like to, in the time we have, first of all, invite my primary USGS partner, John Hoffman, who runs the Pacific Island Water Science Center, to share a few words with us on what he's heard today and any advice that he might like to share with for the benefit of our whole audience. Anyway,
Well, thank you, Dr. Jensen. I'm not sure I have a whole lot of advice, but I do have some thoughts. And I really appreciate time at the end of today's meeting. Boy, there were just some great talks today, and they really highlight the diversity in the skill sets you and your folks have at WERI. And you and your team have really contributed a lot to the body of knowledge needed, to address today's water resource challenges in Guam. And I'd like to, reflect back on the opening remarks by President Christ. He clearly identified the importance of partnerships, today to address today's water resource challenges in Guam. It's critical to work collaboratively in partnerships that cross jurisdictions and geography, because we know that water resources don't recognize these political boundaries. So in addition, collaborating partnerships bring differing and valued perspectives. All of these perspectives are needed to address and tackle these water resource challenges that we have. And so the remarks from the president that kicked off today's meeting just really did a great job at highlighting the importance of partnerships. And the USGS has been a partner with WERI and GWA and Gov Guam and DOD for a long time. And we're a very proud partner in this partnership in helping meet the water resource needs of the island. We started water resource monitoring in Guam way back in 1951 with the installation of 3 gauges in the southern part of the island, stream gauges, and a rain gauge near Fenna Dam, as well as water levels in Fenna Reservoir. And since 1951, we've operated and monitored 22 unique continuous streamflow gauges, up to 8 rain gauges, 16 groundwater stations, and all of that has been all of that has been in partnership with either WERI or Gov Guam or DOD. There was a little bit of a hiatus in the 90s owing to a reduction in funds, but as you highlighted in 1998, the Comprehensive Water Monitoring Program made funding available to WERI, and that resulted in the refurbishment of deep monitoring wells and a renewed program in water resource monitoring. And we were able to come back strongly. So, we were able to match some of those funds with federal dollars and expand the partnership again. And so the current monitoring program that the USGS has island-wide is funded cooperatively between WERI through Gov Guam and the Navy and then the USGS. So it's been a long and healthy partnership. And as you mentioned, Dr. Jensen, this network is expanding, and we're just proud to be part of it. So yeah, I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say, other than we recognize the importance of this great partnership.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just keeps getting better. Thanks, John. I'd like to next invite my primary contact and colleague in the NAFAC MAR, who is one of our other main partners. I mentioned the One Guam initiative, and Maria Lewis is the One Guam coordinator. And I've been working with Maria since about the time I got here. It's been a long and very good working relationship. So I'd like to invite Maria to share some thoughts and perhaps invite some of her DoD colleagues to share their thoughts on the One Guam partnership in particular.
Thank you, John. I don't have a lot to say other just to add to what John Hoffman just spoke of. The partnership is great. The collaboration is fantastic. It's very helpful to have so many resources to work with, particularly, you know, with USGS and WERI, the expertise that's available there to help us make decisions on how to move forward. We really appreciate that. We appreciate working with GWA to collaborate for what's best for Guam as a whole. We're helping each other and it's working out great. And I don't have much more to say other than that. I'm not sure if Commander Perry is still online, if he wants to add anything or say anything additional.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. Just want to say that what we have going as far as a partnership with the One Guam initiative, and moreover, even the partnership with WERI specifically is actually, it's been very successful. I've had several conversations with Dr. Jensen with regard to compliance. Obviously, I'm very focused on execution of construction projects, and WERI is a critical piece of that team to make sure that that our DoD contractors are doing the right thing, that in the design and siting of critical infrastructure projects in the interest of national security are taking the water resources, the very valuable water resources here in Guam, into deep consideration. So in that light, I couldn't say better. I couldn't say anything better about how the process works, how it's successfully and it's proven through the years that this is a successful team. So with that, I don't have anything else. I appreciate the opportunity to listen to all this great research. Very interested in seeing some of the let's see. Yeah, Ms. Bravo's thesis looks like it's going to be a really, really good body of work, and I look forward to that. And I appreciate your presentations, Dr. Wander. It'll help inform some of the planning decisions moving forward at JRM. So I appreciate everything. And with that, turn it back over to you, Dr. Jensen.
Thanks, Commander Perry. It just keeps getting better also. Pleasure working with you and your team, and we'll keep moving forward. We have just a few minutes left, and I'd like to call on our other primary partners, starting with General Manager of Guam Waterworks Authority, Mr. Bordalio. I alerted him yesterday that I'd be calling on him. So.
Thanks, Dr. Jensen. The GWA relies heavily on the expertise that WERI and USGS provide. Just as an illustration, some of our existing collaboration, nitrate impacts to the NGLA, and how that relates to expanding our wastewater collection system and the regulation of septic tanks. This issue has come up in the recent past, and there's a lot of noise on the issue from different groups who have different special interests. And we were very grateful for WERI's participation in providing sound scientific data to support what I believe were the correct arguments with respect to those types of issues. And that's something that I think only an organization like WERI can provide. So I appreciate Dr. Jensen's statements very early on about having to inform both sides honestly, and sometimes he's at odds with both sides. I think I've kind of experienced that for myself, where he's given me something what I didn't necessarily like hearing, but it was, the factual truth, and we appreciate that and try to make our decisions based on that. So that was one of the issues, existing collaborations that we've had. We've also relied on WERI to help us figure out how to capture more data from some of our spring sites, and they've done some excellent work on that, which we hope to move forward with in the future in improving our ability to produce quality water for the population down south. We've also recently engaged Dr. Jensen to help both GWA and DPW for issues affecting stormwater disposal, which can, if not properly managed, cause sewer system overflows if stormwater gets into our sewer system. And so we're trying to work jointly and cooperatively with DPW to address some of those issues in the Harmon Industrial Park area. And just a couple weeks ago, spent traipsing around the jungle, around the Harmon Sink, to give folks from DPW and GWA a better idea on how to manage those stormwater issues. So we have a good history of collaboration, which we would like to see continue. And just to touch on some of the priorities for GWA looking forward, I intend to tap Dr. Jensen and his team and USGS to help us with the Ugam watershed and enhancing its production and capabilities, and how we could best use information from them to help manage that water resource. And also for our 120 production wells, optimizing our production rates for existing locations for existing wells, and then also optimal placement for new or relocated wells. And this kind of data is important, especially in terms of public policy. We have the Public Utilities Commission has a consultant who is telling them that GWAs should not pursue any further production well projects because we have high water loss rates, which we do. We acknowledge that, and we're working on bringing those down. However, the issue that was raised with high chlorides in certain portions of the basin, which we do have existing production wells, putting in new wells in the right places and taking older wells offline that may not be producing the best quality water. That's part of managing the resource, and to make a decision or to form policy just based on your opinion of water loss rates and therefore no more new production projects, that's to me short-sighted and not relying on sound scientific data. So using the type of information that WERI is able to provide with us along with USGS is an important part of our objectives moving forward with managing our water resources to best serve the people of Guam. So those are some of the future priorities that we have and we'll engage in discussion with WERI and USGS on. So thanks, Dr. Jensen, for your continued hard work, you and your staff, and also for the opportunity to share my thoughts on this moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Vidal, and your team. It's great working with you. The other directors, when I meet them at the meetings, are always amazed and intrigued to hear about the relationship we have with our water utility and the practical things that we're engaged in. It's a really rewarding part of what we do. We're just about out of time, but I wanted to offer a moment to one of our other principal partner agencies in Gov Guam, and that is Guam EPA. I think if Mr. Leon Guerrero is there, or Captain Bearden, their chief engineer, if you'd like to contribute the last word, I'll give you a moment to take the mic.
Hey, Dr. Jensen, I'm just going to give a moment for our administrator, Walter Leon Guerrero, to get on if he's available. If not, I'll say something.
Okay.
Well, I guess hearing none, Walter, if you're able to, if you are able to get on, and I'm just stop me and I'll give you the floor. But yeah, we've been, of course, fantastic partnership between Guam EPA and WERI for decades. And I also worked with WERI long ago when I was in the CNMI DEQ and with the CUC up in CNMI as well. And so I have well over 25 years now working with WERI and have always just produced phenomenal work. And recently we've really moved forward with a lot of really exciting projects that are going to be helping our push to modernize Guam EPA's regulations and to follow more of an evidence-based approach to that. Natalie Bravo's project, of course, with updating the groundwater protection zone map and making policy recommendations is one that's very exciting to me personally. I'm also excited to see the nitrate modeling work that's going on. Those all fit together. As you know, we've been working for the last couple of years to try to take some new approaches to how we regulate nitrate and especially unsewered development in Guam. And we don't want to get to where the CNMI is where they actually exceed the groundwater and drinking water standards for nitrate in their developed areas now. I was really excited now, especially to see the surface hydrology work that you guys are doing with Dr. Habana. I had not seen that yet. I think I missed that on one of our AWWA conferences. And as you guys know, we have the Guam Silver Jackets Working Group, which is a collaboration between the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Statistics and Plans and several Guam agencies. And I've been working on the flood policy task force for quite a while. And looking at the way that map is, it really explains a lot about what we see in northern Guam in terms of these I guess I'd almost call it surprise flooding that occurs over time as people develop these areas. Our staff go out and they do these inspections for new homes, for example. And as you guys know, the surface topography is very gentle up there. And with the vegetation in those places, it's almost impossible to see when you're just doing a permitting inspection for a single family home lot, whether or not you're building in or near one of these depressed areas. So that mapping itself will be a very important component of the changes to policy that we need to make going forward to prevent these flooding problems that really plague northern Guam especially. And then finally, I'd like to just give one more chance for Ms. Walter Leon Guerrero to chime in if he hasn't. Walter, have you gotten your microphone working? If not, the last thing I'd like to say is that I know that internally as an agency, we're really trying to find ways that we can really, invigorate our workforce. We know that WERI is producing some very talented graduates. We also know that the first graduates from the engineering school are going to be coming available later this year. And we are hoping that we can find ways to bring everybody on board and to really bring in some new talent and some passion and excitement to our workforce. If people like myself, I'm really honored. This is one of the greatest opportunities I've had to work here with Guam EPA, but honestly, they don't want me here long-term. This is supposed to be a short-term thing, and we need to get talented people in here that we can train up to take the helm and run Guam EPA in the future. So that's all I have to say. Thanks, Dr. Jensen.
Thanks, Kevin Bearden. The main reason that you haven't seen the surface water hydrology before is because it's brand new. And I'm really proud of the cutting edge work that is going on here, and the faculty, the students, the staff just do a great job. I tell my friends and family I got the world's best job. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming and invite you to send us your questions by email or stop by. And nowadays you can set up a Teams call and we can carry on the conversations that we started today. If it were not for the pandemic, I'd be inviting everybody to get ready for lunch, and we'd line up for the buffet. I can't offer that now, so. But all I can do is stop talking here and let everybody get to lunch in time. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank Amanda and her team from GLEE for the great job they did in orchestrating and managing the whole program, all 3 meetings. And I want to thank all of our participants today, our community leaders and citizens and students and everybody who joined us. It's all one big partnership and it just keeps getting better. So thank you